Jai Hind everyone. I am Shruti Jain, Assistant Professor, MC Department, Ajay Kumar Garg Engineering College, Ghaziabad. The topic that I am going to discuss today is the examples on waterfall model and spiral model, which is covered under the software engineering subject, and the subject code is BMC 302. So let's understand basically what a waterfall model is. Waterfall model is basically used when we are creating or developing any of the software. So this is the most common and the classic of the life cycle models, which is also known as the linear sequential life cycle model, which moves in the form of the water flow, starting from the top, then down, 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 and so on. So it is very simple to understand and use. In a waterfall model, each phase must be completed and its entirety is completed in entirety. The whole of the phase needs to be completed before the next phase of it begins. But if we look at as a disadvantage, it is the least flexible and the most obsolete of the life cycle models, and hence it is not normally used nowadays. It is well suited to the projects that have very low risk in the areas of user interface and performance requirements, but has high risk in budget and schedule, predictability and control. So these are the phases of the waterfall model. The first phase talks about the requirement analysis and specifications, where the requirements are gathered from the user, they are analyzed and then they are specified into the SRS in order to note down what the user wanted from the developers to develop in the project or in the software. All the requirements, that how the software should look like, what all things will be there, what are the functionalities, what type of hardware would be used, what type of software would be used. All these requirements are gathered by the developers from the users, so that it is easy for them to develop a software at the later stage. The next phase that we have is the design. The design phase includes the designing of all those diagrams which help in the coding part. That could include the DFDs, the ER diagrams, then we have the class diagrams in case we are using the object-oriented programming approach. So these all designs are documented in the SDD, that is software design document, which is a compilation of all the diagrams which help in the development of the software at the later stages. This documentation is necessary so that later on, when the software needs any updations or changes, these designs help in order to clarify them. The next one is coding, where the actual programming is done and the unit testing part of each and every module of the software is done at this stage. Once the coding is done, then we move into the integration and the system testing phase, where the whole of the software, some modules are integrated together and then tested, and at the final stage, the whole of the system is integrated and tested together. The last phase that we have is the maintenance phase. In the maintenance phase, the whole the software is deployed at the user's end. Now, once the user uses it, or maybe after a certain period of time, they need some updations into the software. At that point of time, the maintenance of the software comes up. So the requirement analysis and specification, the theoretical part. So the requirement analysis and specification basically decides what the project is supposed to do. It does not think about how the program will accomplish the task. It is only related to the working of the project. It describes when the program will what the program will do once it is completed. It gives us the user manuals, which tells how the user will operate the program. It talks about the performance criteria, what would be the performance of the product or the software that is being developed. Planning for the quality assurance requirements and identification of risk associated with the project is also done at this stage. What all kind of risk may be coming at the later stages, what all budget would be there, what would be the cost, all those things are also discussed at the requirement analysis and the specification phase. The output, as we already discussed, is the software requirement specification, that is the SRS document. This SRS acts as a contract between the customer and the developer. So this is the first phase of the software engineering waterfall model. Once this requirement analysis and specification is done, next phase that comes is the design phase, which plans how the system needs to be implemented. It discovers different structures that underlie the problem that is to be solved. It decides what classes and methods would be needed. It has two of the approaches, the structure design and the detailed design. The structure design only talks about how the outline of the whole of the software, what would be the modules and everything. The detailed design would be going deep into each and every module and then identifying what all things are there in the software. It also talks about the description of the classes and the methods. The diagrams which shows the relationship among the classes if we are working with the classes and objects. And we have ER diagrams, data flow diagrams also as a part of the design phase. The output in this is the software design document. This software design document is sufficient to begin the coding because it includes all the designs that we have created in before doing the coding of the software. The next phase is the implementation or coding phase and the unit testing. So in this phase, the code is compiled and written. The implementation of design begins concerning writing the code. What language would you be using? What platform would you be using while you are developing the code? All those things are done in the implementation part. The code implements the classes and methods that are being discovered in the design phase, and the output over here is the code listing. Once the code is developed, then it is unit tested. Each and every module is tested on the basis of some of the test cases. All those test cases are noted down in this testing report. So this testing report tells how a module is performing when it is tested under certain conditions. So the small modules are tested in isolation from the rest of the software product after writing some overhead code, because we need to integrate each and every module. So this also need some of the overhead written code so that it does not give you the error and it can run as a full code. The integration and the system testing. It is an important phase, and effective testing results in the delivery of high quality software, satisfied users, low maintenance cost and more accurate and reliable result, because now we have many modules integrated together in order to give you the result. The unit testing checks each independent module is implemented correctly, and hence very little chances to determine whether the interface between the modules is correct or not. Hence, the integration testing is done. System testing tests the entire system where the software is a part of it, and it builds a confidence in the developers because all the test cases denotes the quality of the software. Lesser the bugs, the more qualitative the software is, and it is more related to the customer's requirements which are there when a software is developed. The output in this case are the different test cases and the test reports. The last phase of it is the maintenance phase, where the user installs a program or the software that is given to the user. The user program for their intended purpose, which the purpose of it is already mentioned in the requirement specification phase. Now the software maintenance include when the user start using that software, he might come up with some of the difficulties or some of the things that need to be changed. So it includes the error correction, the enhancement of capabilities, deletion of obsolete capabilities, coming up with new capabilities, optimization of code, and all those things. So once it enters into the maintenance phase, the output over here is the revised versions and the reports at what all places the changes has been done. So we have taken an example where we are creating a waterfall structure for the library management system. So if we look into the library management system and we have to work on the waterfall model, that means all the requirements will be taken up at the requirement specification phase only, where the requirements are analyzed. So we have two types of requirements, the functional requirements and the non-functional requirements. The functional requirements are all those requirements which talk about the functionality of the software. Non-functional talks about which are not related to the software directly, but yes, they impact the software, maybe the response time, the availability of the resources, the cost effectiveness, all those things. So when we are making the library management software, we have certain functional requirements like the user login for the members and the librarians, maybe the students, the faculties, searching the books because it is a library by the title, author or category, what kind of book it is. Returning and issuing of the book, calculation of fine if there are late returns or the student loses a book, adding, updating, deleting the book records. Some of the books may become outdated or they need to be replaced. So addition, deletion of some of them, updating, there are more copies coming into the system. Then membership, who all are the members, the currently active students or maybe the pass out students. So all those things are the functional requirements that need to be incorporated into the software. Non-functional would require the response time for the search. It should be very less than 2 seconds. Availability of system to be 99%, security of member data. So in that case, the stakeholders interviews the librarians, members, IT staff to know their requirements. Designing of structure, that is the design phase. The architectural design, decide the client server architecture, the database, what are the different databases to be used, what are the tables for the books, members, transactions, fines. UI UX design, the interface, we need the login screen, we need the search page, admin panel, then we have some of the catalog also. So all those things come into the design. Then what type of modules are to be designed? Book management, member management, transaction, report module, the technologies that are to be used, MySQL, Java, Python, HTML, CSS. So all these things are decided in the design phase only. Implementation, the front end development. Implementation would include both the front end and the back end. Then the connectivity. So front end, the login forms, search forms, dashboards. Back end, we have different operations related to the book, create, read, update, delete, borrow, return logic, find calculation functions, report generation. Again, what kind of coding is being used, the queries for database queries, then the stored procedures, all these things and the integration of them comes under the implementation phase. Testing, the unit, system and the integration testing. Unit testing is where each and every module is tested separately. Maybe the search function is tested, then the login page is tested. Integration, where we check whether the two modules when interconnected together are working properly or not. Example, issue of the book and update the database together. System testing, testing the whole of the library management software as a whole against the requirements that are being given by the user. User acceptance testing, whether what all things the librarians and the members, they are tested in the real scenarios, fixing the bugs. At the end, we deploy it. So installation is being done, start guide is given to the user, and lastly the maintenance phase, where once the deployment has been done, all those errors that were coming are fixed. The software is updated for new requirements, the optimization of database for the speed, and provide user support and training. So this is how we try to create any model. We try to divide the whole of the project into different phases so that a particular model can be implemented into our software. We have one more model, that is a spiral model, which was presented by Boehm in 1985, and it is similar to the incremental model where the major focus is given on the risk analysis. It is not in the form of a linear sequential model, instead it moves into spiral, and the project is repeatedly passed through different phases and iterations. So let's look at the structure of it. We have the communication done by the user from here. The user is communicated the planning is done, what are the estimations, risk analysis, scheduling of it, the modeling of the requirements, the analysis, the design phase and everything comes in the modeling. Once the designing phase is completed, then the construction of code and the test suite cases is being done. The testing part and the coding part, once done, it is deployed. Once the deployment is done, the delivery is there, the feedback is taken from the user. Once the user gives some feedback, it is again communicated to the team, they try to enhance it and then it moves into the spiral in this manner only. So, each loop of the spiral from x-axis clockwise through 360-degree, it represents one phase. So, one phase is split into the 4 sectors of the major activities that we have seen over here. So, these 4 sectors are planning, the risk analysis, development and the assessment. Planning, which determines the objectives, alternatives and constraints. The risk analysis, it analyzes the different alternatives and the attempts which are needed to identify and resolve the risks that are involved into it. The development, where the product is developed, it is tested using some of the test cases. The test suites are prepared and then then it is checked whether it is passing that test suite or not. Later, the assessment, this assessment is the customer evaluation, how satisfied a customer is once a software is deployed at the user's end. So, let's take an example of this as well, where we have to create a spiral model mapping for an e-commerce website having the 4 iterations here. So, in the first iteration, again, we will be doing the requirement planning and the feasibility, where the objective is to identify the core requirements, the basic requirements that are there in any of the e-commerce website. So, it could be the registration of the user, the browsing of the product, shopping cart, etc. The feasibility study, to check all the 3 feasibilities, whether the software is feasible to make or not, whether the software will be created or not. So, that is technical, financial and operational. Once the objectives are identified, the risk analysis is done, where the risk of unclear customer requirements are there, the technology compatibility issues are discussed. The development and the testing phase, where the initial system is being created with the requirement documents and the preliminary UI sketches and the wireframes are developed. They are tested. The evaluation, once this concept and the wireframes are given to the user, they give their feedback and then the software move into the next iteration, that is iteration 2. The iteration 2 is where the prototype and the core module development is done. The objective over here is to develop the functional prototype covering the product catalog, search feature and the basic checkout. So, previously if we look into the iteration 1, we were only talking about the requirements where the core requirements were there, like user registration, the browsing of the product. In the iteration 2, we are trying to create the prototype of it, where the functional prototype is being developed. Again, the risk analysis is done, where the data security risk in handling the transactions are identified. The performance issues, where the product list becomes larger and larger enough. Now, when the development phase comes, we start with the implementation of the front end and the back end, and we try to conduct the usability testing. Customer evaluation, it demonstrates the prototype, we gather suggestions for the improvements of it. In the third iteration, we try to move on to the advanced features and the integration, where the objective is to add the payment gateway, authenticating the user, order tracking, admin panel. With the increase in the different iteration, the risk analysis also increases. So, we need to check whether the payment gateway integration is a failure or not, or the security vulnerabilities like SQL injection, different cyber attacks and everything needs to be checked. The development and the testing phase, we try to implement the secure login, encryption for payments, order management system, perform security testing, integration testing, etc. Again, the customer evaluates and give their feedback. They present secure and functional system for feedback before the deployment, the final deployment is done. The last one is the finalization of the whole of the project with the deployment. Here, the complete testing, the system integration and the system testing is done of the system. Performance optimization is checked and the deployment is being done to the live server. Risk analysis, the server, they try to handle all those risks beforehand, where the server downtime during the launch of the website or when it is going on live. Scalability issues under high traffic, what are the different issues that can occur when the project goes on a live server. The deployment and the testing, loading the testing, bug fixing, database optimization. Then the preparation of documentation and the training material for the admin users, the user manuals are being prepared. The evaluation of the customer, the final approval from the stakeholders is being taken, and hence it moves into the go live state. So this is how the spiral model works. It is not a kind of a waterfall model, where the waterfall model was taking all the requirements from the user and then trying to work on each and every phase separately. Instead, here the user is involved throughout the software development in the spiral model. The user is giving the feedback and that feedback is taken into the next iteration, and hence it leads to more of the user or the customer satisfaction. So that's all for today. We have discussed today the waterfall and the spiral model. In the next upcoming videos, we'll be discussing some more models in detail. Thank you.